Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 12 o'clock on a Sunday, which means it's time for a Q&A. Now, this is where I take all the questions that you've asked over the course of the week and I answer them to the best of my ability. First of all, a couple of things that I want to say. Sorry I missed the Q&A last week. My intention was to film it at Blackpool, but I was just running around like crazy and honestly, I just didn't have a spare hour to film the Q&A, so I apologise. I am back this week with a bumper Q&A. Also, I'm going to be doing a video about Blackpool. In fact, by the time you've seen this, it might have already been done. But I want to say thank you to everybody that came to the Blackpool Magic Convention, everyone that I spoke to, everyone I chatted to. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a fantastic time. I know I did. It was a wonderful convention. Don't forget, I typically film these videos on around about a Wednesday or a Tuesday. Today it's actually Thursday. I'm doing a bit later because I didn't get back from Blackpool until Tuesday. So if you want to guarantee to have your question answered, maybe put the question in before the Tuesday. That's normally a safe bet. If I don't answer your question, I very much apologise. Ask it below and I will get back to it the following week. And you're getting my raw, unfiltered opinions when it comes to these Q&A. I'm not reading them beforehand. I'm giving you a spur-of-the-moment answer. If I think something needs a bit more research, then what I will do is I will do a longer video at some point down the line to answer that particular question. But without further ado, that's everything that I need to say. We're going to get into this week's Q&A. Let's do this. So the first question is from Teddy143Iffy. Okay, who says, "Hi Craig, just got back from the madness of Blackpool. Not everything went right and too much queuing, 30 to 40 minutes to get into a lecture, so I only did a few things, although I saw Matt in the bear pit and had a chat with him on the stand. Matt King was amazing and worth the price of the ticket, and again, didn't get a chance to say hi either to you, because you and I were doing something." Okay, so, question. My only really magic buy was Evoke. And I only have seen a bit of the download, but the problem I'm having is seeing the markings. Even though you say they pop out. And I showed a friend, and she said she could see the markings. I showed a friend, and she said you were showing her something at Blackpool, and she said she could see the markings. Have you got any tips to help? I know you can't do a video, but any advice would be appreciated. I'm kind of reading this as you're struggling to read the markings on Evoke. Yeah, because you're saying the problem is I am having is seeing the markings, even though you say they pop out. Okay, so you're saying that you're struggling to see the markings on Evoke. Okay, so the first thing you need to understand is, although Evoke is very easy to do, it's practice. And what I mean by that is you got Evoke at Blackpool, right? So you probably wouldn't have looked at it until maybe the Monday at the earliest. I'm filming this on the Thursday, and this comment was from 2 days ago. So this comment was left on the Tuesday. So if you're at Blackpool the whole weekend and you got back on the Monday, you've left this comment the following day. So my first piece of advice is give it some time. You know, the problem with a lot of magic these days is people want that instant gratification. They want to be able to do it instantly with no practice. And just because Evoke, a lot of the routines are self-working and the marking system is very easy to read, it's still going to take a little bit of practice. And I think you're just not giving it enough time. I think that's the main problem here, based on when you're answering this asking this question versus when you went and picked it up, right? So what I would say is, first of all, get used to what the emotions are. So, right, okay, anxiety, boredom. You want to try and not memorize the emotions, that's not important, but know what they are. You know, you don't want to just look at the marking system without knowing what the emotions are at all. At least spend 10 minutes having a look through the emotions. Next thing is, you want to look at the backs of the cards. Give the cards a shuffle, look at the backs of the cards and just stare at it and see if you can work out what the marking is. Remember, it's a letter for each square. You can normally pick up on the emotion just by looking at the first couple of letters. Because if I see B-O, I know it's going to be boredom. If I see Z-E, I know it's going to be zest. Remember, some of the words are longer, some of the words are shorter. So if you see, you know, bear that into mind as well. But have a look, shuffle them, have a look at it and say to yourself, right, that's zest, and check it. Yeah, okay, what's this one? It's a depressed. Yeah, that's right. So go through them all and do that. Once you've done that, shuffle them up again and then put them down in front of you and then pick them up and see how quickly you can name them off just by looking at the marks. And remember, it doesn't have to be a quick thing. The way that Evoke is made, especially when you're using it as a stack, is that you've got all the time in the world to look at those marks. If you're having them take a card, and then you look away and you put the pack down on the table and you say, I'm not going to look. You have a look at that emotion. You're looking directly at that mark. You've got all the time in the world to see what that card is, right? Because you're looking over here. You've got a reason to look away and not look at them. So it's not like it's a speed thing anyway. Take your time, relax with it. When you get yourself into a situation where you're ready to do this in the real world or to real people, the next thing I'd say is don't worry too much about the markings, because if you're worried about maybe a couple of the different marks, remember there's a million different things that you can do with Evoke. Because it's a deck of cards. So if you have them take a card and you look back over here and you see a mark and you for the life of you can't read it and you're getting really stressed out, don't worry about it. Just take the card, control it to the bottom, have it put back in the deck, control it to the bottom of the deck, do an all-round square up and look at what the card is at the bottom. You know, there's a million ways to get out of it if you struggle to see the marks, or go into a completely different trick. There's so many different routines you can do with Evoke. It doesn't necessarily have to be one that's based on the marking system. So if they take a card and you can't read the marks, go into the any card at any number, or the any emotion at any age, which doesn't involve any markings at all, or one of the other millions of tricks. So you know, you have the ability with Evoke to be able to go in any different direction depending on where you are and what's going on. But with regards to the marking system, I think the big piece of advice I can give you is give yourself a bit more time. Practice it. You know, practice makes perfect. That's I think probably the most important thing that you can do. Okay, so the next question is JPlays568, who says, "Hi Craig, hope you had a good time at Blackpool Magic Convention. I've got some questions. Question 1. Do you think it's necessary for someone to have experience in close-up / walk-around performing in order to be able to perform on stage? I'm interested in mentalism, but I'd also be keen to hear your thoughts with this in regards to magic as well. Do you think someone has to have experience in close-up walk-around performing in order to be able to perform on stage? Not really. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Not really. I don't think that's important, because they're two completely different skill sets. The ability to perform on stage is very different to the ability to perform in a mix and mingle situation. When you're performing in a walk around situation, there's certain things that are really important that aren't necessarily important on stage. Angles are really important. Blocking is really important. Pocket management is really important. Choice of material is really important as well, in terms of, you know, not having to use a table and things happening in the spectator's hands and so on and so forth. Performing on stage, well, you look at somebody like Matt. Matt went and did his show at the House of Secrets, and he absolutely smashed it. And yes, he has had experience doing close-up, but I would argue that the reason he did so well isn't because of the experience he had doing close-up. I think it's because of his experience performing on stage in all the various different things he's done, whether that be as an actor or that be as you know, a musician. I think the most important thing, if you want to perform on stage, the most important thing isn't necessarily having experience doing walk around magic. I think the most important thing is you have experience being on stage, stage presence, knowing how to stand, knowing how to carry yourself, knowing how to project your voice. You know, all of that is very, very important. I would argue that if you want to be a stage performer, one of the most important things would be to go to an Amdram society, or, you know, a musical theatre group or something like that, and learn about stagecraft. And don't just learn about stagecraft, but learn about stage itself, learn about lighting, learn about sound, learn about PA systems, learn about mics, learn about everything that you need to know. If you want to be a stage performer, being able to do walk around magic, I think, is not really that important. The most important thing is having the ability to stand on stage and confidently present to a group. And that's the same with mentalism as it is for magic. So no, I don't think having experience as a walk around performer is that important. Okay, so the next question again is from Jay Plays, who says, in the past you've done hows and whys videos for things like digital force bag. Would you be able to do one of those videos for the Svenpad? I'd love to see some examples of how you use this in your performances. Yeah, I've actually got quite a lot of work on the Svenpad beyond just forcing something, because there's an awful lot you can do with a Svenpad, and a lot of people don't realise that there's more that you can do with it than what a lot of people do. And it's on my list of things to do a hows and whys on. I've got a big list. I've got thumb tips. I've got a million different things that I need to get on with. It's just, honestly, it's just finding the time. Those hows and whys videos take a long time to do. And so far this year, I've had to deal with Blackpool and a million other things. But yeah, definitely in the next maybe month, I should be able to put a video together on the Svenpad. I think that's a really good idea. Okay, so the final question is from, the final question from Jay Plays, not the final question today, but the final question from Jay Plays is, do you think it's possible to perform as a mentalist stroke a magician without using sleight of hand? Or is some level of proficiency in sleight of hand always going to be necessary? Look, you don't have to do sleight of hand in order to be a successful magician. Absolutely not. You look at somebody like Matt Clooney, for example. You look at somebody like Matt. Like, I've seen him perform in the real world tons of times. He doesn't do anything with sleight of hand at all. His go-to effects are Evoke, Stebbins, and Amverdi die. He doesn't do anything with sleight of hand, and he's killing it. And if you look at his stage show that we put up on the Matchumentary, there's no sleight of hand in that as well, at all, in any way, shape, or form. I can't remember what he did now. He did the Jay Sankey thing where you take your memory away. No sleight of hand in that. He did the Psychology by Luca. No sleight of hand in that. He did The Imposter by John Morton. No sleight of hand in that. No, there's no sleight of hand in literally anything you did on stage. So you can become a very successful magician without any sleight of hand ability. I do think that if you study sleight of hand, it allows you to become a better performer, both for mentalism and magic. I mean, look at mentalism, for example. How many billet peaks and billet switches are there that allow you to perform absolute miracles? Now, do you need to have that ability to be a successful mentalist? No, of course you don't. However, by having that ability, it opens up new possibilities to you as a performer. So I think that sleight of hand will absolutely help, and that should be my attitude. I want to learn as much as possible, even if I don't have a use for it right now. I might have a use for it down the road. Now, if you want to be the sort of performer that Ryland wants to be, Ryland really kind of gravitates towards manipulation, and he wants to do, you know, the really crazy manipulations as he's older, then yeah, you need to learn sleight of hand. But if you don't want to be that sort of performer, then maybe learning sleight of hand is less important. If you want to be a comedy magician, yes, 100%. You can be a comedy magician without any sleight of hand at all, because there's a million self-working props that you can buy that will allow you to be able to do that. But if you throw some basic sleight of hand in, it'll open up the doors much wider than it would have done if you've pigeonholed yourself into one area. And I think ultimately that's the thing that you need to consider. If you don't learn sleight of hand, or if you have no ability to learn sleight of hand, you are laser focused on a certain amount of routines. If you do learn sleight of hand, then those routines open up to a wider amount of possibilities, both on stage and in close-up magic. So I'd say learning sleight of hand is a fairly important thing, but it's not the be-all end-all. Okay, so the next question is Eric E, who says, question: as a hobbyist who only performs for a few people, one of the issues I run up against is searchability of magic tricks. Magic marketing is so prevalent nowadays that all one has to do is Google boarding pass magic trick, and the name, price, creator, and performance video of the trick I just finished pops up. The method isn't revealed, but I feel some of the mystique is lost, especially if I develop patter to make the trick specific to me. Should more effort be paid into ways of avoiding this? Do you see it as a problem? How do you deal with it? Thanks. I understand where you're coming from. I really do. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because obviously it's a business, and these producers and developers want to market their magic. But at the same time, you know, I understand where you're coming from. Like, I've always tried to keep things completely separate. So you look at my new trick through Penguin, which is Mind Blocks. The product is called Mind Blocks, but the deck that you bring out when you actually show it to the spectator is something completely different. It's like Blockology or something like that, which doesn't show any results. Let me just see here. I've just done a search for motivational poster playing cards magic trick, and nothing has come up about Evoke. We've got magic trick posters for sale, card trick posters for sale, magic trick royalty-free images, magic trick royalty-free images, magic posters. No, there's nothing that I can see that has anything to do with Evoke, and I'm on to page 2 now. And that's the example of a trick. You know, that's the perfect example, really, when you think about it. You know, so there are ways. You know, we haven't really. I suppose what a producer should do, ideally, is try to come up with a separate name for it. But also, as a performer, whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, one thing that you should do is you should focus on the presentation as much as possible, so that people don't try and Google a method. You know, I mean, there's going to be a certain percentage of people that just want to find out secrets, and they might try and Google something to figure out how it's done. But those sort of people, if they find something, they're not going to buy the trick. They'll see the product page, they'll forget about it a couple of days later. But I think very few people will actually do that search if you make the presentation engaging, if you make it really engaging. And also, so using Evoke as an example, you don't want to make it about the cards. You want to make it about them. So, for example, if I'm doing Evoke, I'm like, hey, we're going to do something to do with emotions right now. In fact, I've got these cards here, the little motivational posters. All that's important about them is they've got emotions on them. We'll use these to try and help us with something that I'm going to do in a minute. It's not about the cards. It's about the routine. It's about what's happening to them. If I do my performance and I do my presentation correctly, they're not going to think, oh, how do those cards work? They're going to think, oh my gosh, how did he tap into my emotion? This is what Ian Rowland talked about on Evoke. He actually, in his section, he talked about making magic memorable, and he talked about how to make magic memorable. So, you know, that's a perfect example of what you can do. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I absolutely get it, 100%. I would say focus more on making the presentation less. I need to find out how that's done, which I know when you're performing for family is a little bit difficult, because family are the most awkward people to perform for, because they know that you don't really have magical powers, right? So they're trying to find out the secret. I totally get that. But you can still try and focus on making your performance kind of more memorable, so that people don't feel the need to search. But on the flip side of the coin, like I say, producers should be trying, wherever possible, to name the trick something different to what the actual trick is. So yeah, I understand it from both points of view. Okay, so the next question is from Adrian Suter, who says, hi Craig. Hi Adrian. I have a question about one very special form of hyping, the pre-order now because only 250 will be printed sort of hype. I know you're a fan of Luca Volpe, and so am I. Yet this strikes me as odd. If Luca is sure the Nyx deck will sell out quickly, why only print 250? And if he wants to keep the numbers of sold deck low, then why hype it? I understand your point of view, Adrian. I totally get that. Let me explain it from a producer's point of view. Now, you've got to remember that Luca has produced this himself. He's not doing it through a production company where they're probably going to order thousands of them. He's produced it himself, right? That's important, right? So he's produced it himself. And he's financed it himself, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm sure he thinks... You see, the thing is, the more decks you print, the more it's going to cost you, right? From a business expense point of view, Luca's got this incredible... He's already probably spent a fortune before he even gets to the point that the deck's printed. I know from working with Phil, he's not the cheapest person in the world to work with. You work with Phil because he is absolutely the best at what he does, and there's nobody that comes close. But he's not the cheapest by any stretch of the imagination. So I know he's going to be down a ton before he even gets to the point where the decks are printed. Now, bearing in mind, also, when, you know, like, when you're working with a production company, they're going to have a cheaper cost of printing because they can print 1,000 of them, 2,000, 5,000 of them, which is going to keep the cost of the printing down. When you're a one-man band, which is effectively what Luca is here, that's not possible. You know, he might not want to have, you know, he's not putting this through Murphy's that I'm aware of. He's literally just producing it himself. If it is going through Murphy's, you know, no one's told me. So he's only printing it himself. So he wants to keep the numbers down because the cost is probably going to be astronomical. It's kind of this business thing, isn't it? It's like, okay, do I order 1,000 or 2,000 of them hoping that I'm going to sell them? Because don't forget, if he doesn't sell them, they're just sitting around on his shelf gathering dust. But, you know, and you don't want to have that because you need that money reinvested into something else because he's always working on new ideas. So he's probably only printed 250 of them because he doesn't want to be left with an absolute ton of them. He wants to make sure that the amount he prints is going to sell. But even then, even with his name as an incredible mentalist, 250 decks is a lot of decks, 250 people. But bearing in mind that less people buy mentalism than magic, it's just more of a niche thing. And, you know, there's people that aren't maybe going to gravitate towards an X. It's an incredible prop. I love it. But maybe some people just will look at it and go, no, you know what? That's not for me, whatever the case may be. So obviously he's still, you call it hype. Why hype it? And I've talked about this on the channel before. Hype is just marketing. I don't think that any producer should apologize for hyping a product because it happens in any industry. Why is it when a movie producer produces a movie, they put trailers out about it and they advertise it and the stars will go around doing interviews for weeks about that film? It's because they're hyping it. Now, it might already be very, very successful when it comes out, but they want to market it to give it the best possible chance. Why is it that there's adverts shown on the television for products that have been around forever? Like, everybody knows what Coca-Cola is, and yet they spend a fortune on advertising. Why is that? Because they need to continue to sell products, right? So I don't think any producer should apologize for hyping a product. Before I started this video, I was in my sales office and I was talking to the marketing team about a new campaign that we're running for events running through Easter. Well, why am I spending money on marketing? Why am I hiring a marketing team? I'm hiring a marketing team and I'm putting money into marketing because I want people to book us for their events, right? That's not hype, that's marketing. Any business needs marketing behind it. Anybody who's producing a product to sell to people needs to market it. They need to hype it to a certain level. And he's right. If he's only printed 250, then that's a valid thing to say. I've only printed 250. But there's a million reasons why he might want to have done it. He might want to have kept it exclusive. Hey, I've only got 250. I'm not going to print any more. He might be worried that, you know, if he prints more, they'll take ages to shift. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think he's done anything wrong by only printing 250 and then saying it's going to sell out quickly, because we don't know the reasons why he only printed 250, and he's right. With the name that he's got, it very possibly could sell out quickly, especially as he was launching it at the end of a lecture at the Blackpool Magic Convention. So, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Adrian, but I really don't think it's an issue at all. Okay, so the next question is from Frankini the Great, who says, "Hi, Craig." Hi, Frankini. Here is my question. When somebody emails you asking for your services and they ask for pricing, what's the best thing to say to that potential client? Thanks for taking the time to respond. I love your channel. When it comes to sales, right, the initial question that people ask should give you a good idea of how your marketing is going and how your brand is going. Because typically, when people inquire with you and they send you an email, they're going to come back with one of two things. They're going to email you either saying, "Are you available?" or some variation of your availability, or what is your price? Now, if they come back to you and ask about your availability and they don't mention price, they are sold on you. They don't care about price. They want to know if you're available for a particular date. If they come back to you and say, what's the price? They're not necessarily sold on you. They're gathering prices, and they probably want to compare and find, the most reasonably priced magician, right? So the first thing is, if you're getting a lot of people emailing asking for pricing, it means your website isn't doing its job properly. Because what the website should do is it should tell people by the time they've finished looking at the website, and by the time they filled in that inquiry form or sent that email to you, that you are the right person for that event. So if they're constantly saying, hey, what's the pricing? Look at your website, because there's a very good chance that that website needs to change, that website needs to improve in order to shift the mindset of the people that are emailing you, right? That's the first thing to consider. The second thing is, when somebody emails in saying, what are your prices, they have all the power. Their mindset is, I'm going to go in and ask for prices. So when anybody emails me asking for prices, or anybody contacts me by phone, or whatever the case may be, the first thing I'm going to say is, I'm going to say, I can absolutely help you with that, but I need to check to see if we're available first of all, because I don't know if we've got any availability. You'll have to give me a date. And what I'm doing is I'm shifting the power over to me. Now I'm planting that seed in their head. Oh my God, hang on, this guy might not be available. I hadn't considered that. So I'm not going to give them the prices straight away, because I'm going to ask what the date is. And when they come back to me with the date, I'm going to go, okay, let me check that. I'll get back to you in a minute. And I'll check it and I'll go, what time do you want? And they'll come back to me with the time. And I'll go, yes, I can squeeze you in, or whatever the case may be. This is called fear of loss. And what it basically means is, you see it all the time. Only 10 sets available. Buy now, limited offer, whatever the case may be, right? This is classic marketing 101, fear of loss. They're coming in and they're just wanting prices. They're like, right, get that guy's price. And immediately you're turning it around and you're making them think, well, hang on, we might not even have this person available. Oh my gosh. And now they're hoping you're available, and you've got them worrying you're available, and you haven't done anything but asked for what the date is that they have available. When they have the date and they come back to me and they give me the date, I'm like, yep, good news, we are available. I can't just give you a price though. I need to find out a little bit about your event. Would it be possible for me to give you a call? Because it's so much easier for me to impulse people if I speak to them on the phone than if I do it over email. So a 5-minute phone conversation will absolutely lead to more bookings for me than a back and forth by email over the course of like 10 or 15 emails. So I'll go, yeah, we are available. That's the good news. Can't really give you prices though, because I need to know about your event. We create bespoke packages for each individual client, and no two events are the same. Is it possible to give you a call for 5 minutes? When would you be free? Now, what that is that's called an assumptive close. So I'm saying, I'd like to speak to you for 5 minutes to tell you about, I'm saying to them, I'm going to create a bespoke package for you. When's the best time to call? When would you be free? I'm not saying, would you like me to call you? I'm saying, when would you be free? That's an assumptive close. When you close, it's your closing statement should be to seal the deal. Whatever you're trying to achieve, it should lead to that achievement. Now, in this case, I'm trying to jump on a phone call with them. So they'll probably come back to me and say, yeah, I'm available now. Brilliant, I'll give you a call. Whatever the case may be. On the Netrix, I'm not trying to use this as a hard sell for the Netrix, but on the Netrix, on the silver level, there's a ton of business content, and I go through all of my sales strategy that I use, because what we're talking about here is sales strategy. We're talking about impulsing customers. We're talking about impulse curves. We're talking about conversion rates. All of this stuff is very, very important. You can see it on the Netrix on the silver level, but in order to answer your question, if they come back to you with what is the price, you then turn around to them and you say, well, before I give you the price, let me find out the date. Okay? Because then that puts the power in your court, and more importantly, it makes them realize that you might not actually be available. Fear of loss, very important. Okay, so the next question is from your Refatano, I think. Hey, how you doing? Hi, Craig. Hope you're doing well. First of all, congratulations on bringing out Evoke. Thank you very much. I have a question I hope you can answer for me. I'll try. I'm an amateur magician trying to get further into the world of magic gigs, but I feel like I still lack the confidence. How did you overcome this issue? And are there any tips and tricks to getting more confident doing gigs? Well, the first thing that I would say is I put a video up on Magic TV probably about 2.5 years now, 2.5 years ago now, all about coping with nerves. So it's definitely worth looking at that video. It's an older video now, but if you search Magic TV, Craig Petty, coping with nerves, you'll probably find it. But in terms of being confident doing gigs, I'll say the same thing to you that I said to Ryland. It's just flight time. The more you do something, the better you get at it, right? And it's the same in any walk of life. It's the same in any industry. It's the same with any hobby. The first time you do it, you're going to be nervous. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. It's as simple as that. So how do you overcome nerves when you're doing gigs? Just go out and perform all of the time. The problem is, and I was speaking to a younger magician about this, who was wanting to do more gigs. And I was like, okay, no problem. And they were advertising themselves as a magician. You can book close-up magic and blah, 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 blah. And I said to them, how many gigs are you doing? And he said, oh, probably about 1 a month. I'm like, okay, so outside of that 1 gig a month that you're doing, when else are you performing? And he was like, I'm not. I only perform when people pay me. You know, I'm not going to perform unless people pay me. I'm like, all right, okay. But it means that you're not getting much experience performing then. Because if you're only doing 1 gig a month, you're not getting that much experience. The most important thing to get when you first start is experience. I've talked about this before, but when you take a gig, there's a system that I use called ACE. It's by a guy called Brad Burton. There's a system I use called ACE. When you take a gig on when you first start, even now, to be honest, after I've been doing it for years, you should get one of 3 things out of that gig. ACE. Assets, cash, experience. So the middle one, C, is obvious. You know, you do a gig and you get paid to do that gig. Cash, brilliant, no problem. The first one is assets. And what I mean by assets, well, they've got a photographer there and they've said if you go to the event, they'll do a load of photos for you. They'll get a load of photos for you that you can use on your website, or they're going to video you performing around the tables, or whatever the case may be. Brilliant. Or you're going to get a testimonial from a celebrity or a high-end client, something that you can use on your website. Brilliant. If there's something that you think could be used to market yourself better and it's a great asset for you and your brand, that's perfect. And then the other one is E, which is experience. You know, if you haven't got much experience doing gigs and you're nervous, go and do some free gigs and get some experience doing them, because the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. I remember the first time I did close-up magic, I was nervous as hell. Now, I don't get nervous doing close-up. The only reason is I've done it 1,000,000 times. I remember the first time I went and did an illusion show. I got nervous. I don't really get nervous doing illusion shows now because I've done it 1,000,000 times. The more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. So go out there and put yourself in a position where you're performing all of the time. Go out and do some shows for free. Go and, wherever the case may be, go out and do some street magic and walk around and show people magic on the streets. Because people get nervous, people lack confidence when they don't know if the trick's going to work. A lot of the time, if you don't know the trick's going to work, you're going to get nervous. If you've performed the trick 1,000,000 times, then you know every single aspect about that trick. Even if it goes wrong, you know how to deal with it. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give you. Go out and get as much experience as possible. There is no substitute for flight time. Okay, so the next question is from Jack Magic, who said, if you could only choose 10 tricks for the rest of your life, what tricks would you do? Also, by the way, Magic Button is my favourite magic purchase. Going to have to buy 10 refills because of how much I use it. Thanks, man. I'm really glad you like it. Magic Button is such a great trick. I love performing it. I really do. In terms of you can only choose 10 tricks to do for the rest of your life, what would you do? I think that's a great topic for a video. So I'm going to do a video on that, if you don't mind, Jack. I think that's a great video. I can only do 10 tricks for the rest of my life. What would I do? I think that's brilliant. So I'm going to use that as the basis of a video, if you don't mind, rather than just quickly rattling something off now. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to do a video on that. So thank you for the inspiration. I really appreciate it. Okay, so the next question is Just Somebody. Hello, Just Somebody. No question here, just a big thank you for exposing most of your tricks on YouTube. Although I already had a couple of gigs, I'm quite new to magic, 2 months newer than Matt, and I have a limited budget for this. Buying the wrong trick and wasting some of my limited budget is something I always worry about. So I tend to be very weary about something I don't know anything about. I've purchased 3 or 4 of your tricks though, and one of the main reasons is I knew exactly what I would get, so thank you. You're more than welcome. I don't think many people do that, and I'm hoping more people start doing it now that I've started doing it. So, you know, if you stand by your product and you think it adds value to the magic community, I don't think it's a problem doing that. Okay, so the next question is Benjamin Franklin, who says, "Hi Craig, I appreciate your desire to be cordial and diplomatic in the case of the drunk amateur magician. However, respectfully, I think that that's dreadful advice. Whether or not that individual is trying to help or detract from a paid performer, try to encourage an intoxicated person or bring them into your set for the evening is like spraying an aerosol can at a lighter. It may work and look good, but it's also highly risky. It can blow up in your face. As a professional, it's important to act like one, and part of that is separating oneself from the conventional amateur or hobbyist. A performer's value and income is necessarily based on that distinction. I understand the benefits of trying to win them over on your side so they do not feel spurned, but in no other paid performance art would we entertain the notion of a tag-along undercutting a professional. It's disrespectful, inappropriate, and should not be tolerated in any fashion. Just some thoughts. Cheers." Man, that's great. That's your opinion. I mean, that's wonderful. That's the best thing. You're obviously a pro. That's cool. And you have one way of dealing with it, and I have the other way of dealing with it. I'm not going to say that your advice is dreadful. I don't think you should say my advice is dreadful, because I've been doing this 30 years. You've been doing this God knows how long. I've probably done more paid professional gigs than most magicians put together. So my advice is based on experience. My advice is based on what works for me at a gig. That might not work for you. That's absolutely fine. And I can see, I totally agree. Yeah, that's perfectly legit advice. I have a different approach to it, as you know, because you're obviously commenting on a video that I put up where I was talking about that sort of thing. Yeah, but I don't think we should be saying that somebody's advice is dreadful, because it's their advice based on their experience. I wouldn't say your advice is dreadful. Don't appreciate you saying my advice is dreadful. I completely agree with what you're saying, and that obviously works for you, and that's great. So, people can take your advice, they can take my advice, and they can decide which way is better for them. And that's the wonderful thing about magic. No two people do the same thing. Okay, so the next question is Hi Mr. Mike M. Hi, Hi Mr. Mike M. Hi Craig, thanks for doing these Q&As and being the macho man Randy Savage of the magic industry. Ooh yeah! When you do your empowerment coins across routine, is there a reason you use a $50 flipper instead of an Eisenhower flipper coin? Does a $50 work better? Yes, it does. And really, it's just for the first move. So when you've got silver dollars, I can't, my hands are pretty big, so I don't have an issue with this, but I can't ever foresee the hand size of the people I'm performing for. Their hands could be quite small, or much smaller than mine, or it could, many times that's the case. If you put silver dollars in a person's hand and you get them to cup their hands together and shake the coins up and down, I've tried it with silver dollars in the past, and that first move, the flipper might not shut. And if the flipper doesn't shut, what ends up happening, excuse me, if the flipper doesn't shut, what ends up happening is it ends up just looking terrible, like a little V thing like that. Now, that never happens with $50, because with $50, it just, they're smaller, they're a lot smaller. Doesn't matter how small a person's hands are, then it's going to work. It's not an issue. Now, I have played around with putting my hand over their hand and doing it that way, and that works, but it takes away from the cleanliness of the empowerment routine. So yeah, the reason why I use $50 instead of dollars is because that first shake move becomes very problematic with certain hand sizes with a dollar-sized coin. Okay, so the next question is from Jamie, who says, purchased Evoke yesterday. I like when you're transparent about things, and I don't understand why other creators won't do the same. I can't replicate the deck for under $40, and knowing beforehand lets me know I'll perform it. Again, I completely agree with you, and I hope more creators are going to be doing that moving forward. Okay, so the next question is from Kelly Savanas, who says, hi Craig, I hope you're well. I just bought your train ticket trick and it's by far the best thing that I have seen. If I had one thing to say, the marking system is great. I just wanted the year 21 and 22 on the back as well. I do ask people to tell me the month and year, and then I can do the rest. Your stuff is great. I do mentalism. Yeah, you know, that's based on the odd and even principle. So if it's even, if the number at the beginning of the marking system on the back of the train tickets, if the number is even, that means it's 2022. If the number is odd, that means it's 2021. So you don't need to have the year marked. I didn't want to have tons of information. I didn't want the year marked, so I built it into the stack position at the beginning of the marking system at the back of each card. So when you look at the back of each card, it might start off as 22S. That means it's a standard ticket, and 22 means it's an even number, which means it's going to be 2022. Likewise, S08 would be 2022, and again, S for standard. So thanks, I appreciate it. Try that out, see how it works. But I'm really glad you like Ticket to Ride. I love that routine. It's part of my EDC. Okay, so the next question is from Divishan, Divishan Magician, who says, I want to do the linking rings, but I keep stopping myself because I think that it's very obvious to guess there's a hole in the ring, because that's just a common sense thing to guess. Have you ever had it when someone says this? Am I correct in stopping myself doing it because of this? First of all, not every trick is for everybody, Divishan. So if you don't like the rings, if you're worried about the method behind the rings, then don't do it. You know, it's as simple as that. If you don't like the method behind the rings, don't do it. Do something else. There's a million tricks out there. I've been doing the linking rings both in close-up and on stage for years, and I've never had anyone say that. And that's because I show the rings at the very beginning. You know, I hand the rings out and I let them see them from the very beginning, or at least they believe that I've handed them out from the very beginning. But if you want to do the rings and you're worried about the traditional method of having a gap in the ring and having a key ring, there's a couple of different options. Now, the first option is use GIR, which stands for Garrett's Impossible Rings. Now, GIR is from Matthew Garrett, and it's a way of doing the linking rings without actually having a key ring. Instead of having a key ring, it's a different method to link the rings together, and it's very, very clever. Ryland uses that in close-up. So GIR is beautiful. It's a really good way of actually doing the linking rings. The other thing that I would say, which is also very important, is if you want to do it on stage, you can get locking linking rings. So Ryland does the flying linking rings. And because of how the method works of the flying linking rings, when they're floating around and they're spinning and they're flying, the rings all need to not have a gap in them. So it locks in place, and you can show all of the rings as having no holes in them, which is a beautiful way of doing it. So you can get locking rings for stage. I've never seen a locking ring for close-up. Doesn't mean there's not one out there. But honestly, outside of that, if you tried it, you'd realise that having a key ring, as long as you're using a well-structured together routine, then the key ring doesn't even get considered as an option. But if you're worried about it, if it's something that's like causing you concern, I wouldn't do it, because if you do learn the rings and that's just the thing that you're worried about, it's ultimately just going to affect your performance. Another question from Divishan Magician. Can you do a talk magic with Magic Singh? I've been trying to arrange one for ages. We've both said we want to do it. He's always busy, or I'm always busy, or one of us is always busy. But yes, I do want to do an interview with him. I think he's a great guy, and it will be something that happens sooner rather than later. Okay, so the next question is from Golden Knights Fan 84, who says, Hi Craig, I have two questions. Okay, so we'll go with these one at a time. Question 1, I love that I can finally do killer magic thanks to the likes of John Bannon, Cameron Francis and Ryan Schlutz, and the ton of no sleight magic. But I love to do more. The only drawback is 90%-ish of the tricks use double lifts and holding breaks, which I can't do due to dexterity issues, hence why no sleight magic. Would you have an easier way to perform some of these moves for someone like me, or am I doomed for doing no sleight magic forever? The last part was needlessly dramatic. You're talking specifically about a double lift here. You're struggling to do a double lift. And is there something that you can do about that? You might want to look into using short cards and having strategically placed short cards in your deck. For example, if you, or long cards or short cards, whatever the case may be, if you have a short card, let's say you wanted to do a double lift and the routine revolved around a double lift, and you had a short card in the third position, you'd be able to grab that double like just really easily. It'd automatically happen. You know, you just go, plonk, show it, and put it down. So I would maybe get yourself a short deck. You can buy short decks. I'd buy yourself a short deck and experiment with replacing some cards with short cards and seeing if that will help. I don't know your specific dexterity issues, so I don't know if that would help or not. The other thing that I would recommend is maybe using Plastidip. So Plastidip is a little bit like roughing fluid, but the difference is you only spray it on one card. So if one card has Plastidip on it, it will stick to any other card in the deck, but it will also separate relatively easily as well. So you could have a card that's got Plastidip on it, and that's the card. And if you put Plastidip on the face, for example, when you put that card on top of the deck and you turn it over, automatically you're going to turn over a double. And it's very easy to handle, but then it's very easy to separate it as well. So again, depending on the routine that you're looking at, and I don't know the specific routine, Cameron and John and Ryan have got lots of tricks with double lifts. Depending on the routine that you're looking at, you might be able to structure it by using Plastidip in place of actual sleight of hand in certain places. So, you know, try a couple of those techniques. Both of those might work. Okay, so the next question is from, again, Golden Knights fan, who says, will you ever do collaborations with the legend John Bannon and Theory 11? I love both, and I'm desperately trying to will it into existence. I don't think the Theory 11 thing will ever happen for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think I'm Theory 11 material. I don't think Theory 11, I'm the sort of artist that Theory 11 would work with. I don't think I'm the sort of artist that Illusionist would work with, so I think there's that to take into consideration. In terms of John Bannon, I would love to, but I mean, geographically, you know, there's issues because he's on one side of the world, I'm on the other side of the world, and he doesn't need to collaborate with me at all. He doesn't need help when it comes to collaborating on his tricks. I mean, I would love to. It would be a dream come true, but I don't think it could ever happen. But hey, if John Bannon, by some strange, weird coincidence, if John Bannon is watching this Q&A and he wants somebody to collaborate on a routine with, I'm your man, John. Just come knocking because you know how much I love your stuff. Okay, so we've got one final thing from Golden Knights fan. Not a question, but kind of more of a statement. He says, finally, a thank you, Craig, because on the Q&A sometimes in May last year, I asked if you could show me a simple coin vanish that I could do to amaze my little nephew. Well, it has worked gangbusters and it amazes him. Since then, my second little nephew has been born, so now I can astonish and amaze all over again. Thanks so much, Craig. That makes my day. Seriously, that makes my day. Okay, so the next question is from SPC97067C, who says, question, since you have created many gimmick decks, how many are you bringing to gigs and how many are carrying with them on yourself? And do you just deck switch or blatantly put one out and bring one in? Depends on the routine. I always have a regular deck with me. In my close-up case, I have about 20 decks. And a lot of them are the decks I've created. I always have a Stebbins deck. I always have a Mem deck. I always have a Quantum deck. I always have certain decks that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. I always have, a Mind Blocks. I have all of these different decks. And I get bored doing the same thing. I know a lot of advice is do the same 5 tricks over and over again. I would hate that with a passion. So when I get to a gig, I'll look in my close-up case and I go, what am I going to do today? What do I feel like doing? I haven't done Quantum deck in a while. I'll put that in that pocket. Now, I typically will carry maybe 2 decks, at the most 3, but generally 2, and one of them will be a regular deck. And I tend not to deck switch in and out of them because a lot of the decks that I'm going to be using, I'll use as a standalone piece unless it's structured to bring them in. So, for example, Quantum deck, if I'm doing Quantum deck, the deck is obviously blank, so I don't need to switch one deck for the other because the deck is obviously blank. So I could do a card trick and then I could finish the card trick and say, actually, I'm going to show you one more thing with this deck. This is a very special deck because it's blank on both sides. Same with something like Evoke. You know, I might start with something and then pull this out and say, well, you know, this isn't really a card trick. These are motivational posters. Same with Mind Blocks. A lot of the decks that I have are obviously different to the deck I was using. But if I was using something like Cheeky Cheeky, for example, which is a deck that I brought out through Alakazam a couple of years ago. With Cheeky, I could switch it in during the course of a routine, absolutely. But typically with Cheeky, what I would do is I would just do it as, I can do a 10-minute routine with Cheeky. So I'd bring it out and I'd do like a 10-minute routine and put it away. So it just depends. I've got all these different decks that I take to gigs with me, and I'll pick 2, maybe 3 at the absolute most to put in my pockets, and then those are the ones that I'll do at a gig. And occasionally the gig will determine which deck that I'm going to do based on the audience, the type of gig, so on and so forth. Okay, so the next question is from Neural Dagger, who says, as far as everyday objects go, I always have my chop pen, and of course it works with other sized things that are super cheap. Don't care if they're destroyed, but you have that Sharpie, you can do all sorts of things beyond the chop stuff, and have it for signing cards as well, so it's perfect. Yes, chop is an amazing everyday carry, and something that I think every single person in the world should carry around with them. Okay, so the next question is from David W465, who says, hi Craig, loving the channel, thank you very much. Apologies for the long post, I'll try and keep it brief. I did your Penguin Restaurant Residency Masterclass a couple of years ago. Since then, since doing it, I've had 2 residencies. Thanks for all the info you give the community. You're more than welcome. I now have the opportunity to start a 3rd residency. It's a great place I've been trying to get to perform for a long while, but I've not had a residency for about 6 to 8 months. They are interested in it being a regular thing, but want to test out the format on their opening night and launch party. No pressure. What are your top tips to ensure I can capture the restaurant's interest for future bookings? I understand the magic needs to be good, but I want to be able to focus on the rapport, reviews, and creating a buzz, and not stress about my 90-phase ambitious card routine. Any quick wins I can work throughout the night to make a great impression. So, very briefly, number 1, promote it yourself before the launch night. Stick a load of posts on your social media, on your business Facebook page, Instagram, whatever social media you use, promote this event. Hey guys, I'm going to be performing Close-Up Magic at the launch event of blah, blah, blah. You're going to see some amazing stuff. Please make sure you come on down. Every single post you put up, tag that restaurant in. Let them know that when they hire you, you're going to be promoting because ultimately a restaurant gets you in because they want to get more business. So if they can see that you're helping with that even before you've done the first gig, that's going to be a massive thing. Make sure you tag them in and yeah, talk about it. And if you've got a mailing list, send an email out to the mailing list going, hey guys, I'm super excited to say that I've been booked for the opening night of XYZ. I'd love to see you there, blah, 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 blah. If you have any friends or family that you can drag along to that opening night, get them to ring up and get them to speak to somebody and say, hey, sorry to bother you, I've just had an email from blah the magician saying he's going to be performing at the opening night of this new restaurant. Is that right? Yes. What time is he going to be there? 7 till 9. Brilliant. Can I book a table for 4? That would be amazing. Thank you very much. So anybody you're bringing along with you, that you've got friends that you can drag in on that opening night, make sure they ring up and let that venue know that the reason they're coming is because of you. Very important. Next, on the night, make sure that you get on super well with the servers and the wait staff. This is not the time to be arsey and moany. I will always take the wait staff when I work at a new venue to one side and I say, hey guys, I'm here to do magic. My job is nowhere near as important as yours is. You guys have a way bigger, more important job than me. So I promise you I'm not going to get in your way. And if you have any problems with tables, like there's an issue in the kitchen, the food's going to be delayed, or you've got an issue with the table or whatever it may be, come over to me and let me know. I'll go over to their table. I'll show them some magic so that I can keep them entertained while that food is getting ready to be brought out. I am here as a tool. Feel free to use me and abuse me as much as you want to. So they're going to really appreciate that. The reason this is important is because the wait staff have the ear of the manager. I have spoken to magicians in the past that have lost residencies because they were an arse and a diva, and the the wait staff went to the manager and said, oh, we don't need a magician. I don't think he's doing much. The manager won't be able to see everything. So he'll be leaning on the staff that are working in the restaurant to get feedback on everything, including your performance and how you are with the guests. So it's really important to get on well. It's why I don't work for tips in a restaurant. I get tips and I'll openly take them over to one of the wait staff and say, hey, I've just had a tip. I'm being paid to be here. Can you put this in your tip jar? I want them to know that they're getting, that I'm giving them the tips that I'm getting. I'm no longer a threat anymore. It's not like my presence being there is going to take away from their extra income. If anything, it's going to add to it. So that's super important as well. Then try to get around as many people as possible. Keep it quick it's snappy. Don't take ages on each table. Leave them wanting more. This is not the time to sit down and do a 25-minute routine. Leave them wanting more. At the end of every single performance, I go, hey guys, thanks very much for watching. Look, I've got to be honest with you. This is the opening night and the manager is thinking about keeping me on and using me again and again. So can you do me a favor? If you enjoyed it, can you let one of the wait staff know as you leave? That would be fantastic. That's something I always do. And I remember when many years ago, I was working in a restaurant, a really nice hotel, and I was working in a restaurant at a Sunday lunchtime. And they have this thing where every Sunday that they have to fill in, the people that are in the restaurant have to fill in a form with the name of the person who they want to suggest for having an award at the end of the lunchtime shift. So it's like, hey, did you enjoy the food? Did you enjoy this? You know, who made a big impression for you at you know, whatever it may be. And they had more votes for me as the magician than they did any of the wait staff, just because I was saying, hey, let the staff know that you had a great job, and everyone was just writing my name down on the form. So that's really important, because then what you're going to do is you're going to have every table go, oh, by the way, the magician was amazing. The magician was amazing. The magician was amazing. Be super friendly as you're doing that restaurant gig. Be super friendly. Be super nice to everybody. Don't get in people's way. If you see somebody's coming over with the food, stop the trick and move to one side. Do not piss off the wait staff. Structure your routines so that you can end and have seen magic. Working a restaurant is not a time to do a Matt Cluley special where you spend 10 minutes building up to one moment of magic, because on minute 8, if the wait staff come over and drop the food, you've got to leave and they've seen nothing. Things like ambitious card and card in the box and coins across are great because they've seen lots of moments of magic. So even if you have to cut it short, they've still seen a ton of stuff. All of that, there's a million other things, but all of that will massively help you. Okay, so the next question is from Matthew Wennell, who says, hi Craig, do you know of any books or videos in getting started in comedy stage magic? I'm doing a video on this, so I'm not going to actually answer it now. I am doing a video on how to get started in comedy stage magic, so look out for that. I'm not going to talk about it now. Will you ever do a YouTube Q&A video about answering questions on a live stream? I'm actually considering it. That's something that I'm thinking about doing in 2024. So all I can say to you on that is watch this space. Okay, so the next question is from Dave Cakyard, who says, Craig, thanks for answering my questions. I'm definitely going to buy Evoke anyway. I want to ask you, if you don't mind, how do you structure a routine for Mem Deck tricks? Like, what tricks do you start with and what tricks do you end off when using Mem Deck? Or do you just destroy the stack at the end? I don't typically destroy the stack at all. I'll typically start off with, I think it's called Test Your Luck. By Darwin Ortiz. It's a great opening routine when you're doing Mem Deck work. In essence, someone names a card, you take another card, they throw it into the middle of the deck, and they throw it right next to the card they've named. That's always a great opener. Then I'll go into a lot of the time I'll do from the Buena Vista Shuffle Club, I'll do the two-person act. I call it the two-person act. It's that routine where you go, right, okay, so here's what's going to happen. You are going to play the role of the mind reader. I'm going to play the role of the person predicting the future. We're going to do a two-person show. It's going to be amazing. And I kind of go into that one then. And then, you know, the thing is, I know a lot of routines with Mem Deck, and it's very, very different. It's very, very eclectic. Card college is something that I like to close on an awful lot, which again It's from the Buena Vista Shuffle Club, where you're estimating the amount of cards that they've taken. What you don't want to do when you're doing Mem Deck magic is do the same thing over and over again. So you don't want to do the same trick over and over and over again, because if you do the same trick over and over again, it kind of gets a bit boring, right? So you don't want to do, right, name a card, here it is, name a card, here it is. Now you can do that to a certain extent with a bit of jazzing. So what I love doing with Mem Deck is I love jazzing, and name a card, boom, there it is, name a card, boom, there it is. But then go into a longer, more structured routine. You don't want to just jazz for 5 minutes and then that's it. You want to end up with a nice routine, and you want to make sure each routine is different. So if you think about it, Card College is kind of estimating the amount of cards that they've cut, while something like the two-person act is predicting the card that they're going to take. Test Your Luck is more about them finding their own card. So try to make it so that every routine that you perform when you're using a Mem Deck is different to the routine before. Okay, so the next question is from RTGTEX, who says, hello, Craig. Thanks for your engagement on these Q&A sessions. I have more of a statement than a question. As a consumer of magic secrets and methodologies, I find it to be entirely subjective. Because of this, it invites a certain element of snobbery to permeate amongst influencers and the influenced, even when a new effect is embraced by all, which is damn near never. And although there is a consensus of opinion, it's still a subjective preference. Opinion is not fact. It can be a fact that an opinion is universally shared, but an opinion by its very nature is biased. Even when considering multiple perspectives and environmental factors, there still might be inherent biases present. Making an effort to consider various viewpoints, gather diverse sources of information, and critically evaluate evidence can help individuals form more informed and well-rounded opinions. The approach promotes fairness and balance in decision-making process, even though complete unbiasedness may remain elusive. Overall, while individuals can strive to be fair-minded and open to different perspectives, the inherent subjectivity of human cognition makes the notion of truly unbiased opinions highly improbable. Recognizing this limitation is crucial for fostering critical thinking, humility, and constructive dialogue. Every time I hear an influencer state that it's their unbiased opinion, I cringe. Regardless of whether it is intentional or unintentional, the statement is ultimately a grift. While influencers or reviewers may strive to present their reviews as fair and balanced, their ability to achieve complete impartiality is indeed constrained by their personal limitations, biases, and perspectives. In summary, while influencers and reviewers may strive for fairness and balance in their reviews, they are inherently limited by their personal perspectives and biases, which can affect the objectivity of their assessments. Recognizing and acknowledging these limitations is essential for consumers to critically evaluate reviews and make informed decisions. In truth, all reviews should come with a disclaimer other than asserting that it's something it's not. Disclaimer. While I've endeavoured to consider multiple perspectives and factors, my review reflects my personal assessment and may be influenced by my individual experiences and biases. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Wow. Wow. That's probably the longest question, not a question, I've ever had on this channel in my life. Yeah, look, I've said this before. I completely agree with you. It's impossible to be completely 100% unbiased, despite, certain reviewers saying they're unbiased. It's completely impossible to be. And a lot of the time with my reviews, I say, hey, it's only my opinion. But my opinion is always going to be biased in a certain way, in many different ways. So, for example, the type of magic that I perform as a gigging magician. So I'm going to gravitate towards routines where they're designed for a real world performance. I had this a little while ago with Triple Helix. I said I didn't like Triple Helix a couple of years ago. Gave it a very negative review. A lot of people disagreed with me. My opinion on Triple Helix was based on the fact that it just wasn't very workable in the real world. And it was kind of something that I would not do. Other people, that wasn't a factor. Patrick Kuhn, I think it was Patrick, performed it on national television. So who am I to, I remember doing the Wizard product review, and we reviewed this bird, production of a bird, a little plastic bird on the end of a wand, and it was the worst trick in the world. Me and Dave absolutely ripped it apart, gave it 0%. 3 years later, there's a guy that went on Britain's Got Talent and went through to the live rounds using the same bloody trick. One man's trash is another man's treasure. I was biased against this bird trick because it just looked terrible. I couldn't see how you could use it. Somebody else looked at this and went, hey, I can build an entire act around that. But it's the same with, you know, I am biased against Peter Eggink. I have spent so much money on Peter Eggink's tricks that are just terrible over the last few months that I just feel like giving up every time I see him review. I haven't reviewed his last couple of tricks because I just don't want to put myself through it. So I'm biased against him. If I see a trick and it's good, I will tell people it's good, but I'm starting at a much lower opinion of what the trick will probably be compared to somebody else. So yeah, I totally get what you mean. You're 100% correct. I don't think any reviewer can say that they are completely 100% unbiased. It's one of the reasons I have an issue with some of the stuff that Unbiased Magic Review says, because he is obviously very biased in many different ways, and to say he's unbiased is just ridiculous. But I think we all are. I'm biased. Magic Orthodoxy is biased. Tyler Lunsford is biased. Everybody's biased to a certain degree. Completely agree with you. Okay, so the next question is from Brady Webster, who says, "Hi Craig, I loved your video you did with Matt about mnemonica. I recently memorized the stack and I'm going through the mnemonica book as well as the repertoire by Assy Wind. I really like microcomasis or jazzing with the deck. Do you know of a way to learn or practice this? I'm struggling to find out with each card. Thanks." Just practice, man. Just practice. The key thing you want to practice when you're jazzing with a Mem Deck is the ability to dead cut. So if someone names the Jack of Hearts and you know it's 20, you want to dead cut to around about 15. And you want to be able to do it without even looking, because once you've done that dead cut and you know where you are, you're then in a much better position to get to that card. It's not really about having an out for every card. It's about the ability to cut and get as close to the card as you can. So the thing that I would practice with jazzing with a Mem Deck is just sitting there for a week and just naming numbers and trying to cut directly to that card. That's a process that I probably spent 6 months practicing back in the day, and now I'm really good at, you know, I'll name a card, King of Hearts, right, boom, 35. You know, and getting really close to it. I think that's very important. Okay, so the next question is from Wayne Thorpe, who says, "Hi Craig, love all your content. You are always trying to help people, which is appreciated. You're more than welcome. I want to join the magic circle. What type of magic would be best to do to pass the first test to become an apprentice? So I'll need to do 2 tricks. I've got your 3 coin sets, which are great, and I've got a load of card magic. Which 2 tricks would you recommend? As I need to show skill and not self-working, I think. Thank you in advance, Wayne." Do the 2 that you're most comfortable with. You know, Greg Wilson would call this a 1,000 timer. What's your 1,000 timer? I had this conversation with Nemid Phoenix a little while ago. Nemid is one of, in my opinion, the best close-up magicians in the world. And I am in awe of his talent. And yet, he did not pass his audition to the Magic Circle the first time round. He did it the second time. Why? The first time he went in and did a set that consisted of a load of tricks that he'd never done before, because he was trying to be clever. And what happened is there were problems during his performance of a couple of those routines. Now, these are problems that he wouldn't have had to... if he'd have done the routines that he'd done a million times and he'd had problems, he would not have to deal with those problems because he's done those routines a million times. But because he was trying something effectively new, when there was an issue, he didn't really have an out for it, and because of that, he didn't pass his audition. The second time he went in and he did the stuff that he does inside out, back to front, and he passed straight away. I would give the same to you, the same advice to you, which is take the 2 tricks that you do the most. It doesn't have to be the most technically advanced trick in the world. It doesn't have to be your best trick. It just has to be 2 tricks that you can perform well without thinking too much about it. That is the route you want to go down. Okay, so then the second question is from Wayne again, is what's the best place to learn non-gimmicked card tricks? Thanks again in advance. P.S. Love the devotion to your son's career. His name will be in lights of Vegas. Thank you very much. On behalf of Ryland, thank you. What's the best place to learn non-gimmick card tricks? I mean, there's a million places, right? There's a million places. Look up stuff by Darwin Ortiz. Look up stuff by John Bannon. Look up the Card College by Roberto Giobbi. Get a subscription to the Netrix. There's millions of non-gimmick card tricks on there and thousands of Sleights. Magic Monthly, Christian Grace. There's a bunch of stuff on there as well. Just that's what I would suggest. Okay, so the final question today is from Ian Walton, who says, "Hi Craig, great show as always, thank you very much. My first is a gripe, which I fear I must bring to your attention. My wages each month is split between bills, my wife, children, Nightshade Fund and Tabitha's House of Pain. I'm currently saving for the Nightshade project, but some bugger out there keeps bringing out amazing tricks like Magic Button and Evoke, and I assume many more in the pipeline this year. This is hitting in my Nightshade Fund, and you're putting me in a difficult position where I must stop giving my wife money. This is a cease and desist message to stop being so damn amazing." Dude, that made my day. Thank you, and I'll try to stop. On a lighter note, I know you have your own outlet for tricks. If you thought about offering signed copies of your tricks, charging slightly more to set you apart from the other outlets when purchasing tricks as opposed to the promotional merchandise? Is it just a thought that was brought on by Murphy's Magic latest competition? You know what? I would happily sign anything if anybody wanted me to. I don't want to charge extra for it. I've got my own shop, Magic TV. A lot of people forget that because I don't promote it. But magictv.org, I've got my own shop. And if you wanted to buy something through there and have it signed, I'd be more than happy to sign it. Anything that you want to buy from the shop, just put a message in saying, "Can this be signed?" and I'd sign it. I'm not going to charge extra for it. I don't want to do that. It's why I try to keep my magic as affordable as possible, because I want people to, be able to afford doing my stuff. But yeah, anything you want signed, I'm your man. So there you go. That's another Q&A in the bag. Thank you once again for joining me right here on Magic TV. Don't forget, if you've got a question, get it into me by sort of Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and I promise I'll answer it. Don't forget, there's a review show special this evening, so look out for the review show special. You want to see more videos like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to go to the Netrix, join the Netrix, try it out and see what all the fuss is about. Hardly anyone leaves, everyone stays, because there is so much content up there, and we're making it bigger and better this year as well. It's www.thenetrix.com. We've just uploaded 5 new routines by Wayne Goodman, and another 5 tricks are going up next week. So make sure that you check it out. It's www.thenetrix.com. I'll see you again soon. My name's Craig from Magic TV.